Hey everybody, so we're doing the centre gauge pod in the XR6 now. Somewhere I did a video which showed the centre gauge pod, the aftermarket one that we bought, plus the gauges, and that's been lost somewhere. We have everything else. So this is just a fill-in to throw the centre gauge pod that we have and the two gauges. So we bought ourselves just some cheap ones, only like 45, 50 bucks a piece, which was an oil pressure gauge and a pyroclastic gauge. So we've welded that sensor into the exhaust that we did when we changed the clutch out, and we have to just make everything fit and wire everything together, make it as convenient and easy as possible. So here it is. Okay, so now time to install the gauge cluster that we've assembled into the XR6. So our main thing is with this, as we have it built here, this looks a little bit rough, but it will get prettied up after the fact as this goes on there anyway, and the idea was to dress that up. So what we need to do right now is take this section, this mid-stereo section, back out. Need to run all the wiring down in, run this wiring for the overhead display up into it, and also there's the exhaust temperature sensor here that we'll have to attach, and then everything out. So the way everything's been wired is we've ran everything into this smaller cable, joined it all together, so our points of running wire and everything we need to assemble will be a lot easier. Tuck it all in and figure out where to go. So take off a few of these covers, get the stereo out. And the last time was where we had problems with the stereo that caused issues with the car. One of the plugs is faulty, and it caused an intermittent fault in the dash. So hopefully we don't have that problem this time after pulling this thing out and put it back in, but we're going to be extra careful. I don't have to rip everything out. I've just got to get it out far enough that we can get in behind it, and hopefully there'll be plenty of access in there. So we'll start ripping all these panels off, get it off, have a play around with that. And once it's plugged in, and wire everything up, of course, and test. Yeah, hope it works. So the gauges in the XR6 now, where they're going to go is in this section here with the heads-up display facing straight up. Now we had trouble with this last time, that we had an intermittent fault in the wiring, and it turns out that one of these plugs has a bad connection in it. We don't know which one, so we're going to pull this all out again and hope that we don't have that issue, but at least if we do, we know where it's at. So we'll get this out, try to get a little wiring through, start getting that sorted, and then we can wire everything after that. The only other thing we still need to do is put in the oil pressure sensor on the engines, but we'll do that at a later date. We'll just get everything run and then mess around with that later. So these come out pretty easily. This tray section here, take off these two outer edges, then this tray section comes out as well, and then there's a screw up here, and then there's a couple of screws in behind here for all this to come out. So we'll get started on that. Oh, crashing down from the sky. Do you ever feel that cold in your stomach to the floor? Okay, so we've got the dash apart. Running the wiring is going to be easy as. It'll tuck down in through there. You can see the gap quite beautifully. And as we got this apart, we're going to check this reverse system stuff too. Now, the camera wire has a trigger wire on it, which shouldn't have been needed to be hooked up, but yeah, we're going to look at that, play with around that a bit more. That is playing up. We have contacted the manufacturer about this, so we are going to have a little bit of a play. But anyway, we're going to get these in, run all this wiring, get this other wiring up, try to snake that sensor up the dash and into where we need it, and put it all back together.
I feel the plucking of our petals. I'm drawing circles on you.
Okay, so we've got the wiring run down for the gauges. Now we need to poke the wire back up through for the temperature sensor, and we also need to run the lead up from the OBT2 connection point for the heads-up display. So we're going to poke them back up through the other way. Hopefully we won't have any too much trouble. It's actually pretty easy to get in there and then connect everything up, get it all out, get the dash back in, and then see what's going to sit. While we're going to see if I have inside any foam sealer for around here to make that a better seal for in here. I didn't realise that was no good. So we'll have a look, see what we've got. If not, we'll just put it back in anyway. And then go on from there.
They're hard to get.
I don't know where that bit goes. But anyway.
Oh, not there.
Somewhere underneath. Let's see how this wants to go in. Much of a pain in the ass this is going to be, but anyway. Okay, so we've got it installed, but we have a slight problem. So the bottom of the gauge on the right, this mounting clip right here, is actually hitting on the top section where that curve is at the top of the centerpiece of the dash. So I'm going to pull it all out and actually shave it off the gauge pod, because the center dash section is more expensive and I don't want to wreck it. The gauge pod is a hell of a lot cheaper. It's like 40-50 bucks, whatever it is. So we'll cut all that out and we'll glue everything back in. Shave it as best we can. Hopefully that solves our drama. So that's what's happening here. So all the wiring's run. We have the unit test fitted as we had done. Now what I found is that where this contour section is that runs through the top of here directly clashed with where these gauge pods sat into the actual plate. So what we've done is cut both of them off. Well, this one broke, but we've cut this one off, and then we've just re-glued them both back in, and it seems to fit fine. It's a little bit out of shape. I think that not everything's quite right, so we had to trim a couple of little tags at the front as well. We've put the plastic clips on at the back, so I'm going to clip it in now. One of the gauges got damaged trying to get it out, so we'll rectify that. We're going to clip it in now, get the other gauge in, repair the other gauge if it's a temporary thing. If it doesn't work, we'll just get another one. They're on a cheap gauge anyway, but we'll try to fix that. And then we're all good to go. We'll wire it all up and then have it as use for the vehicle. So we'll chuck this back in now. So for now, the heads-up display is just going to get double-sided taped in. We'll have a mess with that later on. Just all as a temporary setup, just till we get everything level with the windscreen, and we'll do that later on one night. Not happy about what's happened here. This is all warped in the sun. That's why it's not sitting right. Makes a bit more sense the more I look at it. So I'm just going to make like a little cover strip to go across there just to dress that up, and it'll the same thing, it'll probably just get tacked in there or double-sided taped in there, but we'll get this heads-up display on there as a temporary setup. We're going to play with that later on, get the positioning right, and then we're going to solidly put it in there. We're going to get a level of where it needs to be and actually make wedges to fit in there and glue everything in there to have it all in the right position, and then it'll be perfect. Same thing, it'll be sitting on there so we can take it off, but at least the wedges will all be exactly what we need every time.